You think you know beets. Sure, they're delicious, nutrient-rich, and there's that whole fun colon cancer scare. But did you know that beets were originally grown for their greens, and that this veggie is a natural Viagra? You'll learn what that's all about, the history of beets, and so much more in this episode of What Am I Even Eating? Let's start with what we farm. All beet cultivars belong to the same plant species, Beta vulgaris, which includes red and golden table beets, but also sugar beets, spinach beets, which got canceled by real spinach like 2,000 years ago, Swiss chard, grown for its leaves, and fun fact, Swiss chard is not even Swiss, it's native to Sicily. And lastly, mango wurzel beets, which are grown for animal feed. And I'm just going to say, a great balderdash word, by the way. Drop your best balderdash definition for mango wurzel here, and I'm going to tweet them out. Because the plant is grown for both its greens and its roots, what's called what gets a little confusing. So, Beta vulgaris is the beet plant, or more commonly, and confusingly, just beets. This is the plant's taproot, and also referred to as beets or table beets, garden beets, red beets, sometimes golden beets, even dinner beets, and what we are focusing on in this video, just the beets. Carrots, radishes, and turnips are also taproots, but not beets, just to be clear. The greens, called beet greens or sometimes chard, are completely edible, as are the greens from carrots and other taproots. However, those are not chard. Why should you eat them? Root greens are highly nutritious, sauteed with some garlic and butter, and it just makes them hella delicious. Plus, over 40% of all US produced food is simply thrown away, and food waste accounts for 8% of all greenhouse gases globally. Plus, beets were first farmed for their greens. It's not as weird as you think to eat them. It all began with the sea beet. Around 2000 BC, Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans began cultivating the plant for its leafy greens. Native to the area, sea beets grew in the wild around the coastal parts of the Mediterranean, hence the name. But not until 200 AD did eating beets really become a thing, eating the taproot, that is, after the Romans crossbred these leafier varieties with the European ones to create beets with a much larger taproot, a lot like what we farm and eat today. During the Middle Ages, the popularity of beets spread across Europe. Even the Roman varieties, for beets thrived in the region's cold, mucky soil. But not just as a food, medieval Europe found medicinal uses for the plant, and it was used to treat digestion and even blood issues. But are beets some kind of natural Viagra? Ancient Rome thought beets to be an aphrodisiac and even had murals of them in their brothels. They may have been onto something. Beets are high in nitrates, which increase blood flow and oxygen delivery. That extra blood flow could help, let's just say, get things up and going. They also contain boron, which contributes to the production of our human sex hormones. So fellas needing a little pick-me-up in the downstairs, maybe try beets. By the Middle Ages, sugarcane production had also begun around the Mediterranean. And while it's no secret the world has a sweet tooth, during this time, sugar plantations were primarily farmed by slave labor because people are horrible. Around the 1800s, abolitionists recognized beet sugar as an alternative, and they boycotted cane sugar in protest of slavery, or what I like to call cancel culture. It worked. By 1840, 5% of the world's sugar came from beets. By 1880, that number was 50%. Beets came to America by way of British colonists, or what I like to call America's first illegal immigrants. And by the 1800s, chard and table beets were being grown in US gardens. George Washington even grew beets at Mount Vernon. The word beet can be both the crop and the prepared taproot, unless you're across the pond where beetroot is the more common name. The word comes from the Old English word bede, which is a variation on the ancient Latin word beta, hence the plant's scientific name, Beta vulgaris, where the latter is Latin for common, therefore Beta vulgaris means the common beet. The most common table beet is the red one with that iconic purple skin, ruby red interior, and those dark green glossy leaves and the bright red stalks. You can also find beets in yellow and a very pale white. Those are MAGA beets. Or my personal favorite, the Chioggia beet, which is red and white striped. It's gorgeous. It's the Tim Burton of beets. Some beets were specifically bred for canning. Their cylindrical shape allows them to be uniformly sliced. But beets are earthy, rich, and vegetal in both aroma and taste, and sweeten up when cooked. The chemical geosmin is responsible for giving beets those earthier notes, as the human olfactory system is very sensitive to its smell. It's what makes mud smell like mud. Geosmin is also found in mushrooms, grapes, and carrots. Roasted beets are a great way to experience this range of flavors and aromas, but if the earthiness is too much for you, try them pickled. Acid actually causes geosmin to degrade and break down, so the vinegar from pickling beets makes them taste less dirty. Beets are featured in the cuisines of many Eastern European countries, like Russia, by the way, Putin can just choke on all the Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, and also the communities populated throughout the Jewish diaspora, and in the cuisines of the Baltics, Scandinavians, Balkans, and Germans. The most iconic food featuring beets is the Ukrainian dish, borscht. That's served either hot or cold and in a rainbow of colors. It's typically a pinkish red bowl of soup garnished with sour cream and fresh dill. Now that you know what's what and how they're eaten, but how do beets grow? I'm going to channel my inner Dwight Schrute. Beets are a cool season crop, and the plants are biennials, which we farm as annuals. Annual crops complete their life cycle in a single year, where biennials take 2 years. Beets are sowed in the spring where they begin to germinate within just a few weeks, forming the first leaves in a very, very tiny taproot. Leaves continue growing and like tiny little solar panels, gather energy and store it in the taproot, causing the beetroot to increase in size. This process goes on all summer and fall until winter freezes off the leaves, leaving nothing but the frost-resistant taproot behind. Come spring, the plant's second year begins. The leaves return and a flower stalk forms, and inevitably flowers. This is called bolting. As flowers are pollinated and wilt, they begin producing seeds. The seeds drop to the ground and the taproot dies off, fertilizing the next generation. Circle of life and all that shit. Farmers interrupt this process by harvesting the taproot before bolting occurs. It takes about 10 pounds of seeds to plant an acre of beets, and they're ready to harvest in about 80 days when farmed as annuals. Each acre requires a foot of water, which is around 350,000 gallons of water per acre. Beets pull a lot of nitrogen from the soil. Remember that part about boners earlier? So they are often grown in rotation with nitrogen-fixing crops like alfalfa or clover or soybeans. Here in California, beets are harvested from July through October. The beets are first topped as their leafy greens are removed, where they then can be left to fertilize the soil. The beets are then lifted, dirt is further removed, and then they are gathered. A single acre can yield up to 25 tons of beets. They will vary in size and are graded from 1 to 3, where grade 1 beets are around an inch, and grade 3 beets can be up to 4 inches in diameter. Beets can also be hand harvested, where they are washed, bunched, and typically sold with the greens still attached, just like these. From there, they make their way to our grocery stores and our farmers markets, and that's how beets got from the shores of the Mediterranean to California to you. To keep beets fresh in the fridge for months, remove any of the greens and store the beets in an airtight container or a sealed bag in the crisper drawer of the fridge. For the beet greens, they're only going to keep for about 3 days once removed. So wrap them in a damp towel, store them in an airtight container, also in the fridge, and let me know what food you want to know about next.